I'm a lawyer, I went to Harvard Law School, let's watch some Legally Blonde together. And by the way, if you're looking for part 1 of this video, it's down in the caption.
How you doing?
Warner, the English language, it is all about subliminal domination. I mean, take the word semester, okay? This is a perfect example of this school's discriminatory preference of semen to ovaries. That's why I'm petitioning to have next term be referred to as the winter ovester.
Excuse me.
I love how they have this law student breaking down how this word is actually promoting the patriarchy, because these types of philosophical discussions for social justice and liberalism are very common in law school. And I'm not gonna lie, sometimes it was a little much. Like, I've always been a Democrat, and I still am, but I think that going to Harvard Law School made me a little bit more conservative, because the folks that considered themselves leftists in law school had some takes that I just found really outlandish and lacking common sense. Like, for example, one thing that really caught me off guard was that being a prosecutor or wanting to be a prosecutor in law school was deemed to be immoral by a large part of the student body. The idea being that if you were a prosecutor, you were buying into an unjust system that over-criminalized minorities and people of color, etc., etc. And while I understand and I empathize with a lot of those ideas and beliefs, that doesn't mean that prosecutors aren't also a very important function in our society. So anyway, all a long way of saying that this type of discourse is completely accurate in law school.
Don't ask.
Wasn't gonna.
Do you see that logo for HLS that's in the background? Well, that was the crest of the Royale family, who were slave owners back in their time. And because of the history underlying this family and the fact that they were slave owners, this led to on-campus protests and calls to change the Harvard Law School official seal away from this slave-owning family crest. And a few years later, and after probably way too much money was spent on this new design, we got a new seal. Good God, Elle, if you want to ace your law school exams, you gotta pick up the pace on the typing speed. This is one of the things that I talked about in this video on how to crush law school, and it's that how quickly you can type really will make a difference in how well you can perform on your exams. Usually because the more you can write, the more points you're able to hit on a timed exam.
Is she carrying books?
That's pretty accurate how she's carrying this stack of really heavy legal case law books. Although one nice thing about going to HLS was that they provided every student with an on-campus locker that you can use to store these really heavy textbooks and your other stuff like gym clothes or your backpack.
You filed a claim.
Yeah, talk about multitasking, but also that's real, especially during your 1L year when your grades are so important. You're gonna use any chance you can get to study. During my 1L year, during exam season, you could catch me when I was stuck at a red light in Manhattan, staring down at my printed outline that I was looking at to memorize and study for before exam day.
How many times you gonna come over here begging me to take you back, huh?
Dewey Newcomb?
Who's asking?
I'm Elle Woods, Miss Bonafante's attorney.
No, she is most definitely not, because Elle is not yet a licensed and barred lawyer, so she's not allowed to call herself an attorney. She could call herself perhaps a legal advocate or a law student who is helping her client, but she can't call herself a lawyer or an attorney. That's against the ethical rules, and it could also lead to the unauthorized practice of law, which in some states is a misdemeanor and in other states could actually be a felony.
And I'm here to discuss the legal situation at hand.
Come again?
Do you understand what subject matter jurisdiction is?
No.
I didn't think so. Well, due to habeas corpus, you and Miss Bonafante had a common law marriage, which heretofore entitles her to what is legally referred to as equitable division of the assets.
Come again?
Due to the fact that you've retained this residence, Miss Bonafante is entitled to full canine property ownership, and we'll be enforcing said ownership right now.
Huh?
Tell him, Paulette.
I'm taking the dog, dumbass.
Okay, so that was hilariously wrong on multiple different levels. Let's talk about it. First of all, Elle brought up subject matter jurisdiction, as if that had anything to do with this case, which is about family law and her taking the dog, whereas subject matter jurisdiction is a requirement for a certain court to hear a certain type of case. For example, to get into federal courts in the United States, you need what is called subject matter jurisdiction, aka the issue at hand needs to deal either with a federal law or there need to be people from different jurisdictions that are suing each other. But to be clear, that has nothing to do with this case. And then Elle brought up habeas corpus, which is the constitutional right for somebody's body and physical person not to be detained without some sort of cause of action or due process. Again, completely irrelevant, but I guess it sounds good and it confused the guy. And then the last thing that Elle brought up, which is somewhat relevant but not really correctly applied here, is the principle of a common law marriage. And a common law marriage is this doctrine that has existed in some jurisdictions that would basically say that if two people behave as if they are married, like living under the same roof, sharing pets or having children, splitting the bills and their income, then even if these people never legally got married and signed paperwork and filed for a formal marriage with the government, the law would consider them as having been married legally. That's why this is called a common law marriage, because it's not a formal legal marriage, but the law would still recognize it as a marriage. Now, of course, this is important because if you're considered a married couple, then that has implications for property distributions and income distributions should you guys eventually divorce. But unfortunately for Elle, Massachusetts does not recognize common law marriages, and so she's really blowing smoke by bringing this doctrine up in this case. At the same time, it seemed like all of this jargon confused the guy enough that her client got the dog, and that's really all that matters is the result at the end of the day if he doesn't contest it.
Ms. Woods, you did well today.
Really?
You're applying for my internship, aren't you?
I don't know.
You should. Do you have a resume?
Yes, we do. Here it is.
It's pink.
Oh, and it's scented. I think it gives it a little something extra, don't you think?
So in my experience at HLS, it wasn't super common for professors to have work internships that they offer to their students. Many of them would take on law students as research assistants or research associates, but usually not interns at their place of work if they were practicing law, which many professors at HLS actually don't do. A lot of them are full-time academics who are writing scholarly pieces for law review journals or advising different nations on putting together their constitution or writing textbooks, but not that many of them are actively practicing. Also, if you are randomly carrying around your resume in class in law school, you gotta be a gunner. And clearly Elle has not yet spoken or worked with the Office of Career Services at Harvard Law School, because if she did, then the Office of Career Services would have definitely told Elle, you should not make your resume pink and you should not make it scented. So based on that scene with the Christmas lights and the snowfall, I can only assume that it was winter break. And if it was winter break, then I have a question, which is, why is Elle still there? Pretty much everybody at the law school goes home for winter break, which is usually 3 to 4 weeks at HLS. And I also love how they portrayed the snowfall to be all peaceful and angelic. It feels very Lake Tahoe. It feels very cabin. It feels very peaceful. But what they don't show you is the sludging in the streets that you gotta wade through on your way to class. They don't show you the polar vortex that snows you into your apartment that you have to get soup for like 3 days for because you don't know if any stores are gonna be open. It was something that surprised me as a West Coaster who has only known snow to be angelic and positive, like at Lake Tahoe. When I moved out on the East Coast, it was just business as usual, except now you get all this snow and ice to trudge through on your way to work or class. And also, in that flyover scene, that's not actually Harvard Law School. Those are the undergraduate buildings. The law school is a bit north of those buildings, and many of them don't actually have that traditional red brick Ivy League feel. Some of the buildings are just older and they're grayed out, and Wasserstein Hall, which is the big newer building, has a more modern feel to it.
What's going on?
Callahan's firm is defending a murder trial. His caseload is so big, he's taking on first-year interns.
He picked him already?
Oh my God, I can't believe it, Warner. We got it.
That only leaves 1-4.
Me!
So if professors do have internships that they give out to law students, which like I said earlier in this video, I haven't really seen, I highly doubt that they are given out this way on a public form, posted on a public bulletin board, almost like in drama class in high school or something like that. Instead, it would probably be more formal and more traditional, like an email. But more importantly, I highly doubt that even if a professor or an attorney needed an extra pair of hands in managing their caseload, that they would take on a 1L when they have 2Ls and 3Ls who are also at their disposal and who are also probably interested and willing to help. Because of course, 1Ls know less than 2Ls and 3Ls, so they're probably going to be less helpful, but also big law firms and most employers look at the 1L's performance and grades as being very important when they're recruiting them. So most law schools want their 1Ls to only focus on school. So much so that some law schools actually bar their 1Ls from doing any sort of work internships outside of classes.
We're defending Brooke Wyndham, whose very wealthy husband was found shot to death in their Beacon Hill mansion.
Gold digger?
You'd think so, since it's...
That is the nicest office I have ever seen for a private law firm to have a meeting in. I mean, that looks like where the cabinet meetings of the United States government are held. Most law firms' offices look something like this. And also, the fact that he is having these 1Ls help on a murder case is nuts. And I mean clinically nuts. Murder cases are as high profile and as high stakes as you get in the world of criminal law. And I understand that he's on the defense side and not the prosecutor side, so he does have a little bit more leeway in how he staffs his cases. I say this because if you're on the prosecutor side, getting assigned a murder case is a pretty big deal and you have to work your way up to doing so. Whereas if you're on the defense side, well, as long as your client is willing to pay you money, then yeah, you can defend them from a murder charge. But still, I think this is absolutely bonkers that he is having 1L's help with a murder case.
Did you know when he first applied? He got waitlisted.
What?
His father had to make a call.
You're kidding.
Good old legacy and power-based admissions to elite universities. You gotta love it. No, I seriously am joking. I do not like it at all. I think it's total BS. And what I mean by legacy are that people's parents went to the school and made a phone call or made a large donation and therefore their kids get in really easily. I do think that legacy admissions is more common for the undergrad school at Harvard than it is for the law school. My law school class I found to be very diverse with people from all walks of life, and it was actually pretty rare to have somebody who you could argue got in because of some sort of legacy factor. But they were around, you know, kids of cabinet members in presidential administrations or grandchildren of Supreme Court justices. I heard rumors when I was on campus that there was a Saudi prince that was also at the school. Never met him. So yeah, definitely a real thing, but not as much for the law school.
Hey,
I'm quitting.
why?
Law school was a mistake. This whole internship was a mistake.
What are you talking about? You earned it.
I didn't earn anything, Emmett. Callahan only gave me that internship because he liked the way I looked.
Speaking of hiring people based on the way they looked, there were quite a lot of rumors that before he was on the Supreme Court, Judge Brett Kavanaugh would hire law clerks based in part on the way they looked. And this isn't just anecdotal. Yale law professor Amy Chua reportedly said that it's not an accident that all of his clerks looked like models.
Callahan only gave me that internship because he liked the way I looked, which he made clear tonight when he tried to feel me up.
I really hate to say this, but SA does remain a big problem in the legal profession. I've seen cases where it happens pretty much at every level. Law students and professors, summer associates and partners, junior associates and receptionists or executive assistants at law firms. I'll give you an example. I had a friend who was SA'd by a colleague, and the response was pretty much a whole bunch of nothing. They claimed to have done some sort of investigation, but ultimately, my friend didn't feel safe in that setting, and the whole experience ruined their perception and relationship with that employer. They ended up getting a different job and they were fine at the end of the day, but it's just unfortunate that they have to deal with this issue at all. And it's even more unfortunate that oftentimes these types of issues do get swept under the rug and the people who are most harmed and hurt by them don't get the justice that they deserve.
Callahan did what?
Just forget about it. I'm going back to LA. More boring suits and more pantyhose and we're trying to be something that I'm just not.
Now, I can only imagine how dejected Elle feels in this moment and justifiably wants to leave law forever, but I do wonder about the prospect of transferring to a different law school instead of just completely quitting, because there's a lot of reasons that law students may not mesh well with the school that they attend for their 1L year, and I think many folks just assume that that is the entire law school and legal experience when it really isn't. Because being a practicing attorney is very different than the law school setting, which is the Socratic method of philosophical discussion and a lot of case law reading. Also, you're making money as a practicing lawyer, and in law school, you're usually paying tens of thousands to attend. But sometimes the student culture may just not fit well with the individual at the specific school that the person is at. So even though it would have been less dramatic for Elle to say, I'm going to transfer out of Harvard Law School, I do feel like, as a law student, if you find yourself in a situation like hers, it's something to consider.
Get up.
What?
You're fired. I have new representation.
Who? So the defendant says that she's firing Callahan, but really she's not firing Callahan, because if she were firing Callahan, presumably she'd be firing Callahan's entire law firm from representing her. And that would include the associate, who it looks like is still representing her, and Elle Woods, who is under the supervision of Callahan representing her. I think the spirit of what she's trying to say is that I don't want you, Callahan, to work on my case, but I'll still pay your law firm to represent me. And as you could have probably guessed, there are a couple of issues with Elle being the legal representative for the defendant in this criminal case. Now, in some limited circumstances and with attorney supervision, it is possible for law students to represent people in court. However, 1Ls are not usually allowed to do this. And in some jurisdictions, not only does an attorney need to supervise the student who's representing the party in court, but the dean of the law school also has to make a specific approval for this to happen.
Why is this relevant?
Oh, I have a point, I promise.
Then make it.
Yes. Chutney, why is it that Tracy Marcinko's curls were ruined when she got hosed down?
Because they got wet?
Exactly. Because isn't it the first cardinal rule of perm maintenance that you're forbidden to wet your hair for at least 24 hours after getting a perm, at the risk of deactivating the ammonium thioglycolate?
Yes.
And wouldn't somebody who's had, say, 30 perms before in their life be well aware of this rule? And if in fact you weren't washing your hair, as I suspect you weren't because your curls are still intact, wouldn't you have heard the gunshot? And if in fact you had heard the gunshot, Brooke Wyndham wouldn't have had time to hide the gun before you got downstairs, which would mean that you would have had to have found Mrs. Wyndham with a gun in her hand to make your story plausible. Isn't that right?
She's my age. Did she tell you that? How would you feel if your father married someone who was your age?
You, however, had time to hide the gun, didn't you, Chutney? After you shot your father.
I didn't mean to shoot him. I thought it was you walking through the door.
Order, order. Order.
Oh my God.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Oh my God.
Bailiff, take the witness into custody where she will be charged for the murder of Hayworth Wyndham. In the matter of the state versus Brooke Wyndham, this case is dismissed. Mrs. Wyndham, you're free to go.
So while it makes sense that this judge dismissed this case as soon as it was clear to everybody that Brooke Wyndham was not the perpetrator of this crime, but in fact it was the victim's daughter who just admitted to doing it on the stand as a witness, the way that the judge did it is probably not how it would play out in real life. Because although judges can make rulings on their own immediately and say, this case is dismissed, I am making this matter sua sponte, aka on my own right, it's more customary for one of the attorneys to make a motion to dismiss and then allow the other attorney to either contest it or agree and join such motion. And then the judge would grant the motion or deny it. While this may seem semantic, it's really not, because the legal system wants to ensure that no party's due process rights are being violated, especially in the criminal context. What the judge wouldn't usually wait for a motion on, though, at the same time, was having the bailiff arrest this witness who, based on what she just says, has established probable cause to be arrested for murder. But to be clear, you still need some sort of probable cause.
Ladies and gentlemen, I present the graduates of Harvard Law School, class of 2004.
So the actual graduation at Harvard Law School is typically done on the Harvard Law Yard, which is outside, not inside like it's portrayed right there, like this, outside. If your goal is to be like Elle Woods and walk the halls of Harvard Law School, then consider checking out my $5 guide that I wrote specifically for you guys to help you get into your dream law school. I made this guide at the price of a cup of coffee, and I also intended for it to be your one-stop shop in mapping out and developing your plan and strategy to land that big envelope and acceptance into your dream school. So to that end, it talks about how to do well on the LSAT and what majors you should probably consider taking and what work experience is important and how do I get these opportunities. By the way, if you're studying for the LSAT, check out one of our partners down below, Adept LR, for a great drilling tool and use the code Julian for a discount. All right, everybody, that's it for me. Have a great day. Hit that sub button if you're not subbed already. I'll see you next time.